In this lesson, I'm going to look at calculating the volumes of cones. So the first thing we need to do is we just need to know what is the formula to calculate the volume of a cone. And it's not any different than calculating the volume of a pyramid. 1/3 area of the base times height. Now obviously the base is going to be different in a cone than it would be in any pyramid. In the cone, you know, we have a circle as the base. So some places you'll see, instead of having the big B for the area of the base, you're going to have pi r squared, because that would be the area of a circle. So remember, this is the area of the base. Make sure you know that. And then h is the height of the cone. Now we can use that in a problem like this where I want to find the volume of the cone. I'm going to take and I'm going to write down my formula. So volume equals, excuse me, 1/3 area of the base times the height. Now I think about calculating the area of the base, which is a circle, and I'm going to need to know the radius. And unfortunately, to start off with, I don't know the radius, the little blue piece here. But I do look at my picture and I notice that I have a 30, 60, 90 triangle in here, and I know the length of the hypotenuse. So very quickly I can calculate the length of the radius, which is the short leg of my 30, 60, 90 triangle, just by taking the hypotenuse and dividing by 2. So now I can figure out the area of my base. I can do pi times 9 squared. There's big B, or the area of the base. Now all I need is the height. Well, again, I don't know the height either, but again, I know it's a 30, 60, 90 triangle. I know the short leg. All I have to do is multiply that by √3, and I have the length of the long leg, which is also the height of my cone. So I can replace the height with 9√3. Put in my 1/3, and I'll have it. Now I'm going to go through this, and I'm just going to come up with the exact value. So I'm going to think about the 1/3. Take the 1/3 and I'm going to multiply it by the 9. 1/3 times 9, that's 3. And then I have the 9 squared in here is 81. 81 times 3 would put me at 81 times 3, 243. But then I have that √3 that I also have, and I have pi. So the exact area, or excuse me, the exact volume of my cone here is 243 √3 pi cubic feet. Now I can use my calculator and come up with the approximate value. And the approximate value will be 1,322.26 cubic feet. So the formula, not any different than the formula for calculating the volume of a pyramid. In this problem, we needed to go through and calculate the length of the radius and the height before we could plug it into the formula. Now in this next one, this time I know the volume of my cone. It tells me that right here. So the volume is 800 pi cubic inches. I know the length of the radius. That's 10 inches. And we want to calculate, notice, the surface area. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw a picture of this. So here's my cone. I know the radius is 10 inches. And really what we need to calculate is we need to figure out what is slant height, because I need the slant height to calculate the surface area. If I know the slant height, I'll be good to go. But all I know right now is the volume, and I'm going to go back to my volume formula. Volume is equal to 1/3 area of the base times height. So I'm going to start plugging in things that I know. I know that the volume is 800 pi, so equals 1/3. Well, area of the base, I could figure that out, because that's going to be pi times the radius squared, which is 10. And then the height, well, I don't know that, but I could solve this equation for the height, and if I draw that height in, that would be right here. And then if I can figure out the length of that red piece, and I already know the blue, I have a right triangle in there. Use the Pythagorean theorem to find the length of the green, which is the slant height. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to solve this equation. Now the first thing that I'm going to look at doing is eliminating fractions. I don't like to deal with fractions if I don't have to. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to multiply both sides by 3. So if I multiply by 3 over here, multiply by 3 over here, now my 3 in the denominator, 3 in the numerator, that's going to go away. Now I'm left with 2,400 pi equal to, well, the 1/3's gone. I'm going to look at 10 squared is 100. So I have 100 pi times h. And then I can go through and I want to get the h by itself, so I'm going to divide by 100 pi. And I find out that h is equal to 24. So the height of my cone is 24 inches. Now I can use the Pythagorean theorem to figure out my slant height. So in this one I'll go a, and I'll let 24 be the a, so I have a squared, plus b is going to be the 100, or excuse me, 10, squared in my head, I'm sorry, so b squared, and it's going to be equal to, well, c, which is my slant height, that's why I'm going to use the little l, and then squared. Now I'm going to go through and I'm going to solve this equation for L, which just means I have to take 24 squared. That's going to be 576 plus 10 squared, which is 100. Add those together, end up with 676 equal to L squared. Take the square root of both sides. So I will find out that L, or the slant height, is going to be equal to plus or minus 26. Now, being this is the length of the slant height, that negative value isn't going to come into play. Come back up to my picture, and now I know this piece is 26. Well, ultimately, you asked me to calculate the surface area, remember? So now I can come down here and write down my surface area formula of a cone. Remember, that was pi r squared. There's the area of the circular base. But then we also have to add on the area of the cone part, and that was pi r l. Plug in what we know. So we have pi times the radius, which is 10 squared, plus, and then pi times, well, there's our radius again, which is 10, and then times the slant height, which is 26. Go ahead, do a little multiplying and a little adding, and we're going to have this taken care of. Well, 10 squared is 100, so I have 100 pi, plus 10 times 26 is 260, and then times pi. So add those together, and we end up with 360 pi. And this was all, I thought it was inches, but let me double check. Yep, in terms of inches, so inches squared. That is our exact value. Now the approximate value would be 1,130.97 square inches. So depending on what the problem asks for, whether the exact value or the approximate value for the surface area, I have them both right there. So in this one, you know, it's a little more in depth, gave you volume, which allowed you to solve for the height, and then you could use the height in the Pythagorean theorem down here to calculate the slant height, which was needed to go into your surface area formula, and then plug it all in and compute your answer. That's going to conclude my lesson on volumes of cones.